welcome back to the Nearlyman podcast. Oh my god, we're not in the studio. What the friggity flip is going on right now? We're actually recording this on the 30th of December, aka Twixmas. So obviously people aren't in the office. Red Bull were just like, you know what, can you do it at home? And we were like, yeah, hell yeah, we can. And I'm joined by two Spurs fans just after Palace lost to Spurs.
Come on.
There's nothing really to celebrate though, is there? Let's be honest. We both lost that game. So
that was a game of football that happened.
Yeah, it was. I didn't go. I chose to watch it in a pub, and I'm glad I did exactly that. Although you did go, Ben, didn't you?
I did go, yeah. And do you know what? It was I think the best away atmosphere we've had all season. It was just fun. I think when you get to a point in a season where you just realise that nothing's really happening and it's just a bit crap, there's something that almost ignites that thing back in you as a fan base of just like, let's just have a bit of fun and just have a bit of a laugh. I feel like we've been there quite a few times before, but yeah, no, it was good. It was good fun. It wasn't a great game, but I'm just
understatement.
Yeah, maybe understatement of the season. It wasn't a great game, but it was. I quite like away days over Christmas as well. Everyone feels like they're in good mood. First time you've seen each other after like a bit.
I never do that ever. I never ever go to Palace on Boxing Day ever.
Oh, I love it.
It's just not a bit of me. I was listening to the TalkSport like drive home show on the way back from the pub, and it was just a bunch of Spurs fans losing their mind. And I think you would have been forgiven for assuming Spurs had lost the game.
Yeah,
It
was bad. We played all right for like 20 minutes at the end, but yeah, I think that was because you were so knackered and just yeah.
Would you rather have won against us but lose Brennan Johnson to us, or have lost against us and keep Brennan Johnson? We've got to talk about Brennan Johnson to Palace. We've got a David. We got a David Orn bomb. Brennan Johnson to Palace today. As a Palace fan, I'm very happy about it. As Spurs fans, how do you feel? Seb, you go first.
I have mixed feelings because I have no issue with him leaving. Like, if we sort a deal for Brennan Johnson, get £35 million for him on the first day of January, that is just the most un-Tottenham thing to ever happen, and it also feels like the most un-Palace thing to ever happen either. That would be like, it'd be crazy. Like the universe is like something's happened there. And getting 35 million back for him, I thought we'd get less back for him, so that's a positive. But based on some of the other transfer fees from the summer, it's like pretty standard for the Premier League these days for a man that got 25 goals and assists last season. He is surplus to requirements at Spurs now. Normally we're so bad at moving players on that become surplus to requirements, and they just stick around, go on loans, sort of run their contracts down. And to be getting 35 million for him to then potentially go push on, go and sign a starting left winger, could be really, really positive for us. I love Brennan Johnson. You guys are going to love him. Like, his personality, he's a great guy. You know, tries hard. He's a good footballer in certain respects, obviously in certain aspects. Obviously, massively has his limitations, and that will frustrate the life out of you too. But in terms of us getting 35 mil from it happening so early on in January, I'm very pleased and positive about it overall as a deal for both parties, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about his limitations, because I saw a Spurs fan say earlier, oh, he's great unless you need him to create anything. And I'm like, we actually don't. Like, we don't need him to do that. All we need is someone to put the ball in the back of the net, really. Like, he will, I think the way we play will perfectly suit him. And you're right that it's so un-Palace and un-Spurs to get this done. I'm convinced that I'm not convinced Glasner will stay, to be clear, but there were murmurings coming out over Christmas that he's already decided that he's not going to sign a new contract. I do not believe for 1 second that we would spend £35 million on Brennan Johnson if we thought Glasner was definitely going to go. He might still go, but yeah, I think it's a deal that works for everyone, and yeah, 35 mil. It's not crazy money. Like, Elanga was 55.
For me, it's a much better deal than that. Not just in terms of the price, but I think even though both of those players have their own limitations, I think I'd rather have a Johnson in my squad than Elanga, because at least Johnson knows where the back of the net is. I think exactly. It's a weird one, really, because like you said about Glasner, I said in my video earlier that if Glasner was to leave, which from an outside perspective feels fairly likely over the course of the next 6 months, he feels incredibly specialist. And I think I saw someone, Seb Stafford-Bloor earlier, who writes for The Athletic, who does a lot of German football stuff, and has said that Glasner, prior to joining Palace as well, has had a really good track record of improving attackers or kind of platforming attackers like Johnson, who it's almost just becomes their simple job just to be able to score goals, run off the last man, kind of limit their involvement and build up all that kind of stuff. Just like he's very good at working with them. And I think that's why it worked really well under Ange, actually, for Johnson, for the most part, just in terms of the juice that we squeezed out of him, I guess. Like, we got 27 goals and 14 assists over the 2.5 years. He's not had as many this season, but he's not played as much football. So I feel like for a manager like Ange or a manager like Glasner, he can be a really useful weapon in your squad. But I'd be worried as a Palace fan how he'd kind of fit in overall if Glasner was to go. But then again, if Glasner might be sticking around a little bit longer, and also it always feels like, with no disrespect to Palace, but you tend to probably play, even when Glasner goes, you're probably going to play percentage kind of football, aren't you, where you maybe sit in the back and hit teams on the break. And again, that is where he can come into it. You saw that with Forest, played in the front two, playing off the big man, making those runs in behind, which is similar to what he's going to do with Mateta if he starts on that right hand side. So I think he can have benefit to you even if Glasner was to go, but it feels a very specialist buy for Glasner's system that you're playing at the moment. I echo a lot of what Seb said. I really like him as a person. I think we kind of forget a little bit in this ruthlessness that he delivered us something that we've been waiting for so long, and he had such a big part in it. And I just love the way he sort of lived it up and soaked it up more than most of the other players after the final and stuff. And he's a great guy, so I think you'll like him. I think
we love a personality hire at Palace, mate. It's our favourite thing ever. I think like you look at Ismail Assar, who is basically like, it's a very much a like for like. People really rate Ismail Assar. I know we've spoken about this before and semi-disagreed on it. Like, Sarr is pretty limited. Like, he is a pretty limited player. If you put Sarr in Spurs' team, you would think he's basically Brennan Johnson. Like, he can't beat a man. He's not creative, but he is rapid. He's really good at finishing, and he's good positionally, and that's all we need from Brennan Johnson. So I'm very pro it. I think it works for everyone. Although it's not done yet. And I'm a bit worried about Bournemouth because I just think they'll be able to offer him a lot more money, or will try to offer him a lot more money than we will. We're not going to... I mean, what's he on at Spurs, do you reckon?
I'll have a look.
He's on about 85, 90k a week, something like that.
He's not touching 100.
Yeah,
I mean, I reckon we'd offer him over 100.
Yeah, I think give him the same or like low 100s, and he'll be happy, I'm sure. Yeah,
we've got to be a more attractive proposition than Bournemouth right now. I'd like to think.
Do you know what, though? I do
bidding war.
Yeah, I do think those are the two sides though that suit him best. Like Bournemouth, in terms of the football that they play, very chaotic. They thrive off spaces as well for their attackers, and like a couple of their attackers, you could argue, are like fairly similar profiles to Brennan Johnson, and him as a final action player would also suit Bournemouth. I think it would just be about. I don't think he'll go Bournemouth over Palace. I think the one he could look at in terms of going over Palace would be Everton. I think if they get involved in a big way, I just think Everton with a new stadium, with the way that they're trending, like playing with Njai, Grealish, etc. Like, I do think Everton are an incredibly attractive club right now for maybe like a player of Johnson's ilk. I don't think there's not a huge difference between them and Palace. Don't get me wrong. I'm not even sure there is a difference. I think Palace are better than Everton right now, but. I just think Everton, in terms of the new stadium, the players they've got, the project they are seeming to be building over there. I mean, it's not like an insane thing, but I think that could potentially be a sway for Johnson.
The other one, apparently, that were linked was actually Villa.
I saw that.
But I just don't see them...
I think the thing with Villa and Everton is I don't see them paying the money. Like I don't see why Everton would spend 35 million quid on Brennan Johnson when they've got.
I think if Villa are going to spend money this January, I think they'll take a bigger gamble and go. Especially if they get a result against Arsenal tonight, I think they're going to be looking at spending bigger than 35 million on Brennan Johnson, which is something that they might possibly regret further down the line. They're going to have a go at it, I think. So it'd be interesting to see.
I also do think that Palace's profiles and their players are like incredibly attractive to play with too. I think you told Johnson like you're gonna have Adam. Like I think Adam Wharton will be one of the players that thrives most off having Johnson.
Yeah,
like,
actually having a runner in behind. Yeah,
him looking forward all the time. Like the amount of times I've watched Palace this season, and you've seen Wharton play a little disguised pass through to Mateta or through to Sarr. Like such a strength of Palace's, and having Johnson, like Johnson's timing of run and movement, I've not seen many players better in that specific regard to Brennan Johnson at Spurs. So and playing with Munoz on the outside of him, obviously it's yet to be seen sort of who you keep going forward from next summer. But I think it'll be a try. I think he'll end up at Palace.
Yeah,
I think the
I
reports
agree.
are so strong.
The thing is as well, like he's never really at Tottenham. he's always kind of scored a lot of those goals coming from wide positions into central areas. Whereas at Palace, it feels like he'll be predominantly operating in more of a central area, which is probably more akin to the role that he played at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see whether he can, he might be able to even improve potentially on his goal tally from the last few years at Spurs, because the wing dynamic under Ange, where Johnson obviously had most of his success, was high and wide, kind of dribbly winger on the left-hand side that would get to the byline, put the ball across, and Johnson would be there at the back post, which is something that you're still going to be able to do at Palace, but you'll probably see him maybe score more goals in transition at Palace than he maybe would at Tottenham, like running beyond Mateta. Because he's also got... Mateta will be a great foil, I think, for him as well. Because I think that's... Definitely. Even though Mateta is... Like, obviously, we were talking about this yesterday. I think that he has been pretty poor recently, and like he can be really frustrating, but I still think you're getting a lot out of him in terms of his link-up play and hold-up play. I thought he was good in the first half on Sunday, and I think to have someone like Johnson running in behind him could be really dangerous. So I like it as a move for him.
I do wonder how he fits in a little bit, because the last thing we'll talk about is like where he'll play, because I think when Sarr's back from AFCON, Sarr is the first choice right winger.
Sarr
and I know
starts over him still for me. Like that's my thing.
I wonder if we'll try and get him to play on the left, and like playing on the left for Palace is not like playing on the left wing for most other teams.
It's like a left 10, isn't it?
Yeah, but because Sarr is so highly rated, but I don't think we spend 35 million quid on Johnson if we weren't planning on starting him, and he might not come to Palace if he doesn't think he's going to get consistent game time.
Yeah.
Do you think he could? The thing is, with the left 10, the way we've played recently with Eze last season and Pino this season, and I know Johnson isn't as creative as those players at all, but like, how adept is he at like getting on the ball?
I replied to your tweet earlier. Like when I watch Palace, and obviously you'll know this way better than I will, but with Pino, with Eze, like, I can't see you setting up with Sarr and Johnson behind Mateta. And especially with Mitchell and Munoz, they're not the most creative wing backs. Like, I think you'd really struggle in that setup, and I think that's even why a lot of your fans have been getting so frustrated at Pino a lot of the time, because I think Pino he's a player that kind of thrives with other technical footballers around him, and it's why I think Wharton is just so important for you, and Pino needs to become more important, I think, for you. And I think if you play Johnson on the left side, I don't think he'd combine that well with Mitchell. I don't think he'd provide any sort of creativity. He's not a creative footballer at all. If he picks up the ball in between the lines, he's going to lose the ball. He's not somebody who plays on the half turn. He's not somebody who can find a cute pass at all. Yeah. I think that's the problem for me when I'm looking at Palace in terms of signing Johnson. I just think the fit could be good for Johnson. It could be a really good move for Johnson. But for Palace, in terms of if I had 35 mil to spend on an attacker for Palace, it would not be Johnson, because I think you could do with a sort of profile that's a little bit more creative. So maybe somebody that could do a little bit more, because you've got Sarr, you've got Nketiah who can play a similar role to Sarr in those 10s as well. Yeah. I know he's also your backup striker. But in terms of when I look at you, I think you are lacking quite a lot of creativity at the minute. You saw that against Spurs. Obviously, you were missing Kamada and stuff who do help in that regard too. But yeah, I worry a little bit about sort of Palace progressing on over the next couple of years with a signing like that. But we'll see.
I mean, he's played predominantly on the left-hand side for Spurs this season when he's got most of his minutes.
So poor.
And again, it's a totally different role as well. And you really see the limitations in his game when he is asked to kind of stay wide, receive the ball back to goal, which is obviously not the same as what he'll be doing at Palace. But he's not, like Seb said, he's not really the sort of player that's going to combine loads in the pockets. I think he's one where you kind of saw it for Wales in the last international break, where one thing you've always wanted to see him do more, and maybe it's because he's not been platformed to do it at Tottenham, is actually shoot from outside the box. He's got a really good goal for Wales in the last international break where he was cutting inside off the left, and it took a bit of a deflection, but hit a good strike with power. And I think, obviously, that's something that Eze did a lot, and Eze's a lot more skillful and has got a bit more guile than him to kind of beat a man, drop the shoulder, etc. But maybe that's where he can sort of show a little bit more if he's playing in central areas, but I still think that it's not... If you're going to play him, I think he has to play in that right channel, that right 10.
Yeah.
And again, I think he can play on the left, but I think that would only work if you had maybe say if Devaney was better, for example. Like, say if he was in terms of being a right footer or left footer, on that right hand side, that could almost, you could reverse the roles of Pino and have almost like a little pocket play on the right and have Johnson running in off the left. And I think that could work, but it's just...
It might work for Johnson, but wouldn't work for Palace, is how I'd sum it up, probably.
Yeah.
All right. I think we need a more creative type as well. I've said that before. Bring Wilfried Zaha home. I mean, he's washed now, but whatever. I mean, Brennan Johnson last season scored the win in the Europa League final. Got 25 goals and assists. I guess you could say he wasn't a nearly man. Seamless transition once again.
What a transition that is.
That's class.
To mark the end of 2025, we are going to determine between us who the biggest nearly man of 2025 was. Now, it's a very open brief. We're bringing 3 players to the table each. You can interpret this how you want, as long as you can give some justification. We can have the same picks as well. We don't know who each other has picked before this. Who wants to go first? Should we do all
say
3
that
at once? Or?
I've got a manager in mind. Is that allowed? Is that allowed?
That's fine. I've also got a manager in mind.
Okay, cool.
Ben, go with your. Ben's got probably my favourite shout, and it's personal to us. I reckon go with that first, Ben.
Okay.
The one that we
Okay.
You know the one.
I've gone as my first one. I've actually gone for James Maddison.
Yeah.
Because he's had obviously a very difficult year. And again, this is quite personal to Spurs, but he's had a very difficult year in terms of getting injured in the Europa League semi-final, which we didn't think was necessarily going to be a serious thing at the time. Kept him out for the final, which he had such a massive part in getting us to. Like that knockout run, he was excellent against Alkmaar in the round of 16. One of his best games he's ever played in a Spurs shirt. Was good against Frankfurt as well in the quarter-final, scored in the semi-final and then got injured, actually celebrating the 3rd goal and came straight after. It's just the way he planted his foot, got injured, missed the final, and obviously there was the whole thing around him kind of having the banter with Roy Keane, Jamie Carragher, Mika Richards on CBS, which, you know, people kind of flamed him a little bit for doing the whole John Terry thing of wearing the shirt and all that, but he deserved to be a part of those celebrations as much as anybody for the part that he kind of played in getting us there. Then, new manager comes in. You really think that James Maddison is going to thrive under Thomas Frank in the way that he's kind of platformed the likes of Damsgaard, etc. Raring to go under a new manager, coming back from injury. And then in his first minutes in pre-season back, wasn't it? It was the first game he played in pre-season. Yep, he ruptures his ACL in the second half of that game. James Maddison is a player, for me, that divides a hell of a lot of opinion in terms of the general footballing public, because we don't seem to really like personalities like that in this country, even though that's kind of what we say we want, and then when we see it, we tend to not like it and don't want it. He is a player that I think his footballing abilities get massively overlooked because of how people view him as a person, and he is a player that I think for what he's done at Leicester and at Tottenham as well, I think he's a player that deserves to be playing Champions League football, and that was a really gutting thing, I think, for him to miss out on as well this season. Won't play any part in our Champions League campaign in the second half of the season.
Would have been the first ever time in his career that he's had the opportunity to do that as well.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. He didn't do it at Leicester. And I just think that...
Also, just to add to that, his whole thing, he's always felt like one of those where he cares so much about England and not being included in the England squads. Felt like if he could have kicked on this season, maybe an outside shot for the World Cup, that chance has been taken away from him. He might never play in a World Cup for England now as well, which is kind of a double whammy with that injury.
And he's had that kind of heartache before. Like I remember I was watching the Monday Night Football segment that he did a few weeks ago, where he was on it and he was kind of talking about his career so far, and he had that injury at the World Cup, didn't he? He got injured just before, still went, and then couldn't really play any part, actually, in a time where it was probably a lot easier for him to get in the team. I think there was a real kind of, that season at Leicester, when they went down, actually, in that first half of the season, on the eve of the World Cup, it felt like there was probably one of the biggest, it felt like there was a bit of a rally to get him in the team. Like there was a lot of kind of hype around him during that time. I remember he scored against West Ham, and then got injured, I think, in the game before the World Cup, and then didn't really play any sort of part. Again, like people might not view it in the way, but as a Spurs fan who feels like, you know, every fan does it about their club, but I feel like we have to defend our players a lot. And I think James Maddison is one that cops a lot of crap from other fans and the media, and I think his footballing ability gets massively overlooked. So I just think that he's had a very difficult year, and he should have been a part of what's actually been a great year for Tottenham. Well, great year in terms of European success, not domestically necessarily. And even in the league, like last season, I know we're kind of going back into 2024 a little bit. Like him and people, a lot of people talked about Kulusevski last year because I think his role changed quite a bit, and I think more people started to notice his quality, and he definitely took a leap up. But Maddison's performances in a lot of our games last season went massively under the radar because of how good Kulusevski was, and I don't think he necessarily got the praise that he deserved, and I just feel like he's a player that's never going to quite get that. So, yeah, James Maddison is my first pick. I think he just deserves to be a much bigger part of Tottenham's success in 2025.
I think that the Champions League narrative there, That's
Yeah.
that's the hook.
It's hard.
For me.
It's horrible for him, isn't it?
That's the thing. I think he was so close for a couple of things this year, like the Europa League final celebrations. Is like he was part of it, but not being on the pitch. Like every player that's had that has talked about it and been like, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Missing out on your first ever Champions League football campaign, because that would have probably been half of what he was celebrating with the Europa League. Like, I'm going to get to play the biggest competition, and a player like James Maddison is going to thrive on that kind of stage. So it's like he missed out on a couple of big things this year in his own personal career that you kind of feel like he might never get the opportunity to do again.
Yeah.
Maybe not at Spurs, because we ain't qualifying for the Champions League this year. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Never say never.
Yeah, exactly. We could win it. We could win it.
You never know.
You've got European pedigree now. Okay, James Maddison, first shout. I like that. Strong. Seb, you can go next.
This episode is sponsored by Hill Coaching Company.
Feeling stuck, bored, or quietly running on empty? Oliver Hill is a UK-based business coach guiding leaders, founders, and entrepreneurs to intentional happiness, wealth, and legacy.
The work is direct and challenging. Honest conversations exposing the self-sabotage and breaking down the comfort zones that no longer serve you.
The result? Clearer decisions, stronger relationships, genuine happiness, and success that feels enjoyable.
Find out more at hillcoachingcompany.co.uk.
I've gone with kind of a duo for this, bending the rules. I've gone with Rafinha and Lamine Yamal because I think they're kind of similar reasoning. I'm going to go with Yamal first because I think Lamine Yamal, you can't really say he's an Nearlyman because he won La Liga, he won the Copa del Rey, had an amazing season. But when you talk about a player of his level, he probably missed out on achieving something like completely historic last season based off one game and one man, you could say, in Ronald Araujo, who really cost Barcelona in that semi. Obviously, you can't pin it all on him, that's harsh. But I think if Lamine Yamal gets through that final and that gets through to the final of the Champions League, has that generational performance that actually takes Barcelona through. Like if that Rafinha goal had been the one that sent them through to the final, first of all, I think they give PSG a way better game than Inter Milan did.
Yeah, definitely.
And second of all, I just think that performance being attached to them winning that two-legged tie, one of the craziest games we've ever seen in the Champions League, would have potentially been enough to see him win the Ballon d'Or.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he didn't take part in that final meant that he then finished second in the Ballon d'Or. And I just think he was probably extra time, like half an hour away from winning a Ballon d'Or at 18 years old, which would have been the youngest that a player has ever won a Ballon d'Or at in the modern game, which would have been completely historic for him. And also having a shot at Champions League final. I think that it was almost like the run that he was on, the form that he was in, how he was playing. I think Lamine Yamal would have had, again, another kind of generational performance in a Champions League final for a player of that age. And I just feel like that one game has impacted so much in terms of what happened with him last season. I think we could be talking about a Champions League winning 18-year-olds, one of the most iconic individual seasons we've ever seen in the Champions League for a player, and a Ballon d'Or winner at 18 years old. And I just feel like he was so close to that and not quite. And I just don't think the La Liga or the Copa del Rey really carry as much weight as the Champions League does, or anywhere near as much weight as the Champions League does for a club like Barcelona, especially in the modern football landscape where maybe the Premier League is the one that people really sort of look at and view as sort of majorly important, and obviously the Liga is as well. But I feel like you kind of get what I mean. Rafinha is similar. I feel like Rafinha more for. He had the best season that he'll ever have in his career last season, like completely insane. Sort of the goal contributions that he got, how close he got, and you've seen, I think, that again, Barcelona missing out on that final. It's very similar reasoning to Lamine Yamal. I think he missed out on a Ballon d'Or podium. I think he missed out on. I mean, he wasn't even included in the UEFA Team of the Year the other day. He wasn't even included. He wasn't the La Liga Player of the Season, which I actually kind of think that he was or deserved. And I feel like he's kind of missed out on a lot from a season that I don't think he'll ever sort of replicate. So that's why I went for those two, because I think they missed out on a fair bit with Barcelona not getting to the final.
I think I really like that when you, because we were talking about this earlier, and I was like, well, with Yamal, like obviously he scored the goal that won them the league and stuff, didn't he? I can't remember who was that away against, where he bent in the top corner. He had a lot of moments and a lot.
Dad, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Pretty sure.
But I think in terms of the Ballon d'Or framing, I think you're right. I think I'd probably edge it to Rafinha just because it's like Yamal's going to get this opportunity again and again and again
Yeah,
and again.
Rafinha
Whereas
won.
Rafinha, it felt like he could have been the Ousmane Dembele. It felt like Dembele, Rafinha didn't quite have the same arc as like Dembele in terms of really hyped up wonder kid, was meant to kind of be at this level, but it took him to kind of go round the houses to get there, and he's had a lot of setbacks and stuff. But he could have almost had his like Dembele kind of season in terms of, an outsider that you wouldn't necessarily expect out of the kind of best players in the world wins the Ballon d'Or. And I think that would have been if they'd have won the Champions League, I think he genuinely would have been in like a big contention to do that. So I like them. I think I like the Rafinha one a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just because like more once in a lifetime type thing.
Well, can I just shock you? Rafinha was one of my 3 as well.
Nice.
Wow,
Even though,
wow.
Again, it's the same thing. Like, he'll just, this season, I won't build on it too much, but this season of his could just conceivably be forgotten by everyone apart from Rafinha. Like,
It will be because
nothing
unfortunately,
came of it really. Well,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, you're right. Like, to win big trophies and to be in Ballon d'Or conversation, you've got to win the Champions League.
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is
You do.
stupid. Which is stupid nowadays. So yeah, in shocking news, I like the Rafinha shout because it was
But
one of mine as
also,
well.
he was the top goal scorer and assister in the Champions League. Had an absolutely generational season. I already feel like people have kind of forgotten about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
In terms of
Well,
that's just
Also,
super
it's in the
unfortunate.
context of their teams. Like, like people associate last season with Lamine Yamal. When I know obviously he was fantastic. Don't get it twisted, but like he wasn't even regarded as the best attacker in his own team by most people,
Yeah.
which I think is like insanely. I think it's unfair. I know Yamal is amazing and he'll go on to be a generational talent, but like Rafinha did a lot. He did a lot last year.
Also, like you're right, in terms of being forgotten, they've kind of got a little bit of the outside focus looking at Barcelona now from like an English point of view as well. Is we're looking at Rashford, aren't we? There's kind of like they've almost got that shiny new toy thing over there, which means that Rafinha isn't getting as much of the spotlight. I haven't been watching them as much recently, so I don't really know
but
who's
also-
kind of playing more minutes, but it feels like the focus just isn't.
Rafinha's been injured, and also he's spoken about. He's like been quite vocal. His wife's been very vocal as well on Instagram, as sort of like just back in his corner. And I think that kind of thing, you can't underestimate how big an impact that has on a player's mental state. When it's kind of like you've done that much in a season, you've given that much, you've already seen how that's kind of impacted him physically. The amount of games and minutes he played last season, he's been injured a lot at the start of this season, and also just mentally, like. You've done all that you can, basically, and it still wasn't enough to sort of be recognised. And I feel like the amount that's kind of clearly affecting him, I think, has an impact too, which is a massive shame. So I love Rafinha. He's a brilliant footballer, and hope that he can reach that level again soon, so we don't have to say that.
Yeah, strong nomination for Rafinha then. That's my shout as well. Ben, who's your second pick?
This one's fairly topical, I feel like, because of the run they're kind of on at the moment. But I've got Unai Emery as a shout. Obviously, last season got to the Champions League quarterfinals, were very, very close to going through that tie against PSG. It was a mad second leg, a kind of mad half hour in that sort of second half that saw them come back. Had loads of chances. Rashford had a brilliant chance to win the game. Donnarumma was putting off all sorts of saves. Then they get to the FA Cup semi-final, get battered by Crystal Palace. And even though they've kind of gone on this run this year, it is in the back of your mind that kind of Villa have had this under Emery before, not necessarily to this level, but they have always been quite a streaky team, it feels like, under him.
Yeah.
Like this time last year, they obviously went on a run where they didn't win in 8 games, wasn't it? I think over Christmas, and then 2025 they started to turn that around, put a really good run together. They also obviously missed out on Champions League qualification, and that was probably more to do on the final day with his own players. Emi Martinez letting him down, going and losing at Old Trafford when they definitely shouldn't have lost. Bear in mind, every other team was going to turn up at Old Trafford that season and winning. A United team that finished 15th, and it all kind of capitulated for Villa on the final day, really, with that mistake from Emi Martinez. Considering that Villa had beaten, I think, Newcastle a few weeks prior in the run-up to that kind of last day of the season. And I think Emery is a guy that definitely deserves his flowers, and I think he's getting, obviously, that, and he's kind of always had that. I've always had this a little bit of a bitter view at times about Aston Villa and Emery because of the fact that he never seems to get any sort of criticism whatsoever, and Villa have kind of been almost kind of pushed into media darling territory.
Don't go down the road
dare I
again,
say.
mate. Don't
But
go down that
don't
road.
tell them that, mate. They think they're the most harshest team in the world by the media.
Also, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted here anyway, so I don't even need to say anything more.
Yeah.
But it feels like maybe it's a bit harsh to say he's a needy man, because I think Villa again they're continuing to build and build and build, but at the end of the day, they didn't quite get over the line last season when they needed to. But they were also, it wasn't just about Emery necessarily. But I almost feel like I'm kind of saying this on the eve of maybe 2026 being the year that Villa and Emery as a project kind of combine and it comes together in terms of something more tangible. Like, again, they've had nearly moments in the past where they should have won that Conference League, probably got knocked out by Olympiacos in the semi-final when they were favourites to win that competition. They're 100% favourites to win the Europa League, in my opinion, as well. I think the way that they were actually able to balance the Champions League, FA Cup run and Champions League fight in the Premier League last year shows that they have probably got the depth to maybe go and win a domestic cup potentially this season as well in the FA Cup, and they're out the League Cup. So I'm kind of saying this with a view to next season it being the year that Emery becomes the not nearly man at Aston Villa, but they've had a lot of nearly moments this year, even though it's been a good year for them. So I'm going to put forward Unai Emery.
You are right in terms of like the kind of time frame. Like, Emery's been at Villa for a long time now, and they've spent a lot of money. They've backed him, and as they should do, they've got an absolutely outstanding manager in charge. But last season, that FA Cup semi-final against Crystal Palace, no offence, Ollie, but Aston Villa were the favourites, and
They were.
And you absolutely battered them. Yeah,
We could and should have won that 4 or 5-0.
And they should have been looking at that as a big opportunity. The Conference League a few years ago, like they've had opportunities now to get over the line in a cup competition, which is what Emery is known for, right? And I think that this season is actually a huge season for them in terms of they're in a title race right now. They're in a very winnable Europa League competition. They've, again, got very winnable competitions in terms of, I say very winnable. Like, obviously, they're so difficult to win, but the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup should be winnable for a team of Villa size and the ability they've got. And I just feel like if they end this season again kind of trophyless, I feel like it will be maybe a case of them becoming a Nearlyman team.
And I think this is where a bit of my this is what I mean. Kind of like when you look back at like Poch's Spurs, for example, and like that was one of the biggest examples of a Nearlyman team we've seen in recent history of like getting to a Champions League final. We were so close to the pinnacle of football, really, pinnacle of kind of club football, of winning a Premier League and winning a Champions League at some point. Whereas Villa haven't even necessarily got that kind of close. But I think this is where some of my bitterness actually comes from, because it's the way that it's almost like reported on in a way, like the way that Spurs were like bantered for ages about kind of being that team. And I think when you look at Villa and Emery, it's always like, oh, look at what an amazing job he's done, and there's no real criticism that comes his way, even when they're going through kind of a dark period. And I think Emery's a really good manager, but I do think when you look at the fact they haven't won a major trophy since the 80s, I think, which is, to be fair, I mean, they won the European Cup. Like, that never gets spoke about, but there's these conversations about them replacing Spurs in the Big Six and all that kind of stuff. This is such a huge thing for them to then not become that nearly side.
It does. You're right. It feels harsh to say it now, and people might be listening and be like, what, like, Villa are amazing, but you're right. Like, they left 2025 with nothing, and ultimately Spurs won a trophy, Newcastle won a trophy. Like, logically, when you look at the rankings of English football, you think, okay, Villa should win a trophy as well, because they are on that level at least. And you're right. Like, they did really well and they have played really well, but at some point you're going to have to be held to a higher standard. And I think Villa fans speak the whole time about wanting to be held to a higher standard and be included as a big club, but that comes with different expectations. Like,
can't have your cake and eat it.
Exactly. Like, if you want to be like that, then you need to win a trophy this year. Otherwise, Emery's a fraud, and you're like, do you know what I mean? You can't have it both ways. I think that's a good shout. I was going to try and include Emi Martinez, but like, because I wanted to have some sort of Villa representation because of the Champions League. League failure to qualify, but I think Emery's a good shout. That FA Cup was a massive missed opportunity, and granted, we've got a really good record against Villa under Glasner, but like, they just didn't turn up on the day at all, and that was just after they lost to PSG or beat PSG at home. Like, they were in really good form going into that. I was terrified. They'd won like 7 in a row going into that, and we battered them. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think no, I don't want to take anything from you guys away from you guys and winning that FA Cup, but I think Villa would have beaten City.
Don't you dare.
Like, I think they would have. So it was like a huge opportunity for them, kind of missed, really. And I just think this year isn't necessarily, or the 2026 isn't necessarily about putting that right for Emery and Villa. But the narrative, I'll change the narrative. I'll do it.
We'll change it.
If we get
single-handedly change it.
Unless they beat Arsenal to win in the league, then they can. I'm fine with that. That's absolutely fine. I'll give Emery all the praise that he wants. But yeah.
Okay, Emery's a good shout. It's a good shout. Right, Seb, who's your next one?
Do you want to do yours first? Because I feel like we've bounced between ours, and you didn't get the platform in the first one, mate.
Yeah, I didn't. No, that's true.
Yours.
I'm just making a note of all these now. Who should I go for next? I mean, I think one of them you guys are going to have. I think I'll end on my strongest one. My next one is pretty bait, to be honest. It's Mikel Arteta.
Did think about it. I did
didn't
think
go
about
with
it.
him.
I mean, like again,
So biased, mate.
it's the fact that last season they lost a Champions League semi-final, a League Cup semi-final, and finished second in the league. And I think maybe it feels different because they didn't really get that close in any of those competitions. Like it wasn't like they lost the league on the final day or they were really unlucky. Like they deserved to finish where they finished in all of them.
Yeah.
But it was just another season of, I think Arteta and Arsenal are the biggest nearly men in England right now, and last season fed into that. And whilst it wasn't as big a missed opportunity as the year before or the year before that, it was still another year without a trophy. And it's similar logic to what we said with Villa. Like it's when Newcastle, Spurs, and Palace, not to disrespect our clubs, like win a trophy, you then look at the teams that didn't win trophies and have needed to win a trophy for a while, and Arsenal definitely fall into that category. And I don't think the League Cup or the FA Cup really moves the needle for Arteta, but ultimately they did fall short again, and it's hard to look past that. I think with Arsenal something big is brewing. Like I think they'll go on like a fat trophy winning run at some point. Hope you guys don't want to hear that. But when they win the quadruple next year, just come back to this clip, honestly.
Genuinely, I'm not like, putting my bias aside. I do kind of feel as though that is going to happen at some point.
It will happen eventually. They've done all the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you've got a squad that's that strong, players that are kind of that ready to almost explode to that level in terms of like the Rices, the Sakas, the Gabriels, the Salibas.
It's a good age profile of the squad as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's kind of inevitable, and it does feel like this season we are clinging on a little bit to. Oh, but City, can City just claw their way there, or can Villa somehow sustain it? And Arsenal are the ones that I still look at their season and go, they are just the strongest team. Like if they don't win it, it would be an upset. And how many more years from this point onwards can that keep happening before they just do win it? They're so well set up in the Champions League. I don't really look at many teams over two legs and go, you're going to beat them despite their lack of European pedigree, and I do think they do kind of shit themselves on the big stage sometimes. Like that is fair enough to say, I think. But I think the only reason I didn't go with Arteta was because I just didn't want to sound like a broken record, really.
Yeah, same.
He is probably one of the best ones there, and I think so many of their players are like Saka, Rice, etc. Like, these are players that need to be winning major honours now, like for the level. They're
otherwise we can start linking them with big moves away if they really want to win something.
No, we should do that. That's why they're nearly men.
We had it for years.
I think it's interesting what you say about this season. I think I'm not saying Arsenal will definitely win the league, but I think people are saying, "Oh, Arsenal are going to bottle it again," is more out of hope than expectation. Like I don't think people actually think that's going to happen. And we spoke about this yesterday, that when I think of title race characters, Man City this year, I think are like the fun, exciting team who are a bit vulnerable, and I don't really trust to go through the next 4 or 5 months without a bit of a losing streak. And Arsenal feel like the team that just like are more inevitable. They're very well set up. They're very deep. They if you like covered the badges and the kits and you ran through each squad objectively and you went, who do you think is going to win the league out of these ones? I think most people would back Arsenal to do it over Man City.
I agree to an extent. It never ever works out like that, does it? And I think the one thing we're like ignoring with City is the thing we're ignoring with City is the fact they have just been there and done it so many times. And I think that Pep, when they get the bit between their teeth like this, and they are vulnerable. I think the thing is, City have always had this element of vulnerability about them to an extent, but maybe not to this level, because they've always had one of the greatest kind of safety blankets in recent Premier League history, and Rodri kind of at the base of that midfield, you know, in terms of when teams might break because of how high City push up, and they've had like a prime Kyle Walker to be able to kind of sweep things up at the back and these kind of things. They don't necessarily have those kind of weapons now, but they've probably got an even more dangerous Haaland than they've ever had. Shirky is kind of playing at the moment almost like you're forgetting that they haven't got Kevin De Bruyne anymore, and Foden is back in the groove, and it's just that. Yeah,
that's the thing I'd say, and that's the reason I think that the only thing I'm clinging on to is that Gyökeres is a donkey. Trossard and Martinelli are kind of like I think Trossard is actually a brilliant footballer that pops up with big moments.
He's a great player to have in your squad, isn't he?
Yeah, but as a starter to go and win you the league, that's what I'm clinging on to a little bit, where I'm like, I still don't think they've necessarily got the firepower, because they have been getting away with it in recent weeks. A couple of like the own goals against Wolves, like a lot of own goals recently. Like I know that they are just a good squad, brilliant squad. The control they've got in games is elite. They are going to force errors. Like these, it's not a coincidence that they have sort of got these own goals coming. But there is also a case, I think, where it's like, like if Jokeris starting every game, I know Havertz coming back will obviously help them, but
he's in the
Trossard
squad
and Martinelli
tonight,
on the left compared to Haaland, Doku, Cherky,
Semenyo as well.
Semenyo,
and that's the
Jordan,
thing. I think we've spoken about this before about like how much of a needle mover do you maybe think Semenyo is for like a title chasing team, but I think the fact that
not huge, but
not huge, but I think the
difference,
fact that City have added him to their arsenal, if you'll pardon the pun, of like attacking weapons. No, it's happened. It's done. It's done. Isn't it?
Allegedly,
it's done. But it's like the fact that City have got there and just got him straight away. Whereas I think he would, despite what you said about the fact that Trossard and Martinelli have been good this season,
he would improve Arsenal. Yeah,
he'd improve Arsenal's starting 11 straight away. And I think the fact that City have gone yoink, we're gonna kind of, and they don't even need to start. You don't even need to start him, do they? Like you could argue that Semenyo doesn't even start in Man City's best team.
I think Arsenal.
I don't actually think he does. Yeah, exactly.
I think Arsenal need to respond in January. I think.
But then who is there now on the market?
They should sign Brennan Johnson.
Yes, because then
could you imagine
Agent Brennan going in at Arsenal would be brilliant.
The own goals will start going the other way.
If Brennan Johnson tapped one in the back post to win Arsenal the league, I think I don't think I'd ever watch football ever again. I would never watch it again.
That would be so funny.
Maybe that's the thing. If Arsenal do go and respond, who actually is there on the market? Because there's been talk about the fact that Arsenal are a team that are like interested in Yildiz or something like that, but Yildiz is never going to move in January, is he?
But if they sign Yildiz, they'll stroll the league, but they won't sign him. I think potentially. I mean, Nico Williams has now signed a huge contract to build.
He's on like 400 grand a week or something.
Yeah. I don't know if they will necessarily respond. They spent so much money in the summer, but
maybe they need some of their actual summer signings like Aberieze to kind of step up and do the thing that they kind of bought.
I was just about to say, I think there will be an Eze left wing arc soon. At Arsenal,
ooh,
I think.
Scary.
Yeah, Odegaard's starting to warm back up, isn't he? As well, like Odegaard played really well at the weekend.
Havertz up front. I'm a big Kai Havertz guy. Who needs Jokeris when you got Kai Havertz?
Facts.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, no, I'm not a big Kai Havertz guy, but I think he's a good footballer.
He's better than Jokeris.
He's low. Havertz is low key becoming a little bit overrated just because of how bad Jokeris is now. Like people are saying him coming back is going to change things for Arsenal. Like he's still got his limitations as a striker.
No, he's the best striker in the world.
Yes.
Right. Anyway, Mikel Arteta is on the list. Seb, next nomination, please. So have you got your Mal, Rafinha, and then two others, or one other? Okay.
Yeah, two others.
Hey, greedy.
Oh, I know. I'm a greedy boy. I was gonna go with a little jokey one. I was gonna say Gibbs White because stuff.
It's actually a good shout.
It's a good shout.
But I haven't gone with him. So technically, I've actually got 5 names written down here. I'm gonna go with the. I'm just so invested in the podcast, lad. I'm gonna go with my final one, which is kind of a weird one, and it's kind of been very recent that this has happened, and it's more championship related. But I'm going Rob Edwards.
You what?
Because no, listen. Let me explain my reasoning, right? Start of the season, joins Middlesbrough, failed at Luton in the Premier League, had a poor season with Luton, got them relegated from the Championship last season. And at that point, your managerial career can go one of two ways. Either you get another chance with another Championship side, maybe it's a mid-table team. You just don't know what happens after a sort of run like that. Didn't do great with Luton in the Prem. Like they were okay, but they got relegated. And I felt like him getting the Middlesbrough job and him having them at the top of the Championship, performing in the way they were, it felt great. The Middlesbrough fans loved him. He had that sort of those quotes that obviously then went massive when he left for Wolves, and Middlesbrough fans were like, well, you said all this and all that.
This is why you should never listen to anything a manager says ever.
I know.
Pause quickly on that. His little intro interview where he's like, he'd said all this stuff. I'm like, he could be talking about anyone. And the middle fans like, this is class. Like,
he gets it.
Class.
We're
gets so big. Yeah,
no,
he doesn't get it. He's just saying,
let's not lie. If a manager joins your club and says all this, I am. Oh my god! I
lapped it up when Thomas Frank said we're going to play brave, aggressive, attacking football in the summer. I was like, this is the guy for me.
We're all just I don't know. We're all just football.
We're just slaves for a bit of dope. We just want dopamine.
Yeah, literally.
We're just obsessed with dopamine.
But I think the thing with Rob Edwards was right. He was in a great position. Middlesbrough could have easily got automatic promotions this season. I don't know too much about the Championship, to be honest, but they were looking good to at least get playoffs, right? They were in a really strong position, started brilliantly. He took over from Carrick, felt like the club needed a bit of a boost. He was riding a wave at Middlesbrough. I think one of the biggest mistakes ever was taking the Wolves job, purely because you might say, oh, but it was with a vision of them going back down to the Championship. They're talking about sacking him this week now because he's done so badly since he came in there. And the problem is, right, is that I think Wolves are going to struggle in the Championship next season with some of the players they've got who will leave, the mess that the club is in from board level, and sort of going in and just thinking you're going to survive a Premier League season and just get the Championship year. Like a promise like that from a board like Wolves board, who are like so poor, so terrible in terms of managing that football club, especially recently, and obviously all the frustrations that Wolves fans have. Yeah. I now feel like if he gets sacked by Wolves, that will have done his reputation such damage in terms of getting another job. He's left Middlesbrough kind of in the shit when they obviously had offered him a longer term contract, had a project in place with him. He then jumped ship to Wolves, failed again in the Premier League at Wolves, which I think completely writes off any chance of him getting a Premier League job again anytime soon.
Yeah.
Whereas if he'd stayed at Middlesbrough, got then promoted to the Premier League, he'd have been a Premier League manager again. He'd have had another chance with a team that probably would have invested quite heavily, probably would have tried to give themselves a chance, or at least you could maybe drop back down to the Championship and get another top Championship job. I think if he now gets sacked by Wolves, I think he's very likely because of how terrible they are under him. He's made them worse than they were under Vitor Pereira. If he gets sacked, he might actually be cooked as a manager. So that is
and by the way, Borough
they've
lost a couple of games in their last 3, but they have been flying without him. They're still second in the league.
Exactly. I think this has done irreversible harm to his reputation as a manager and as a person, and I think that's a bit harsh.
But he is handsome,
managerial personality. But he's cost himself as a manager. He nearly got back to a great place as a manager, a place you'd want to be in, and then he threw it all away. He's a nearly man.
What is the highest his stock has ever been, though? Is it just when like people were like calling him handsome when he was doing the interviews at Luton?
Yeah.
He is a good-looking guy. He is a good-looking guy.
That got to his head, though.
I remember. I think I remember. Again, like I'm like you. I don't lock into the Championship every single week, but I remember Callum Fowler, I think, saying that when he left, he was like, Borough's position is actually a little bit false. Like they've not been that good with him. They're actually better off for letting him go and all this kind of stuff. And again, like I said, they've lost a couple of games recently, but the Championship is the most competitive league in the world. Anyone can beat anyone. Blah blah blah. They've been really good without him, so the proof has kind of like manifested itself. Yeah, this is the best league in the world. When you
clip that up.
Did you guys not lock into the Championship on Boxing Day? Or?
Absolutely
not.
No,
I didn't think so.
It actually was football Boxing Day.
I did.
Family.
Yeah. Put that on.
Got a family. I was too busy doing literally anything else. So.
Yeah,
literally.
I was only invested because of my accumulator. But yeah, I don't mind that. As when you first said that, I was like, what?
You've thought about it, and I respect that.
But there's method behind the madness there.
Right, Rob Edwards is on the. Well, it's more of a long list, really, isn't it, than a short list. Ben, who is your final pick, isn't it? Yeah. Final pick.
I think I went with my strongest 2 first. It's probably my weakest one, but I'd say there's method behind it.
I've first till last.
Yeah.
As I say.
I've actually gone with Andoni Iraola. And I don't hate it because I think that he is a manager that is always in these kind of conversations when it comes to Man United, Tottenham, getting a bigger job than Bournemouth, etc. Again, last season, massively tailed off from what we saw in the first half of the season. This season, they're following kind of the same pattern and are now down in 15th, I think, after a really promising start where Semenyo was flying. And I think this is why, despite the fact that I think there's a lot to like about Iraola's football, I was quite sceptical about the links with him at Tottenham. And I think me and Seb were in a kind of similar boat around like March, April, when I think we probably first started to feel like, okay, Ange, can't really stay here. I'd much rather someone like Thomas Frank because I feel like we need a bit of stability. And I think this is actually one of the reasons why, I'll say that it's not really worked out with Thomas Frank yet so far at Tottenham, but this is why I'm not sure that Iraola's football can, one, scale up to a better side that has higher aspirations than what Bournemouth have got because of the chaotic nature in which it's played. But I also feel like now he may, because of this swinging form over the course of the last few months, a couple of months really. I don't think they won a game since October, have they? End of October, was it, against Nottingham Forest?
They're winless in the last.
It might be now that he's kind of missed the boat to maybe make that jump to like a Tottenham or a Man United. I think the thing is the only thing that I'll say that slightly contradicts that is that his contract is out of is up at the end of the season, and I don't think he'll sign again with that. I'm going to double check that now, but someone said that to me earlier in a different conversation. It was actually when we were talking about Brennan Johnson potentially going to Bournemouth, so I'll check that now. But I just feel like maybe he is. Yeah, I think it's out of contract at the end of this season. I just feel like he might have almost missed the boat when his stock was so high. Like, you think of the conversations that Iraola was in, and every job under the sun he was getting linked to, someone that could potentially take over at Man City and be the heir to Pep Guardiola. Real Madrid, he could go abroad. And now he's languishing in 15th with Bournemouth. I feel like his kind of football has maybe taken its toll a little bit on the playing squad. It's very one-dimensional. And I just feel like maybe now he's kind of put himself out of the reckoning a little bit when his stock has been incredibly high at various points over the course of the last year. So I don't think it's, Iraola's not going to win this prize, but I think it's worth a mention because I just do feel like he's another one that, like, when you're watching Sky during a game and they're talking about Bournemouth maybe, and like Jamie Redknapp will sit there and go, oh yeah, Iraola's done such a great job at Bournemouth, and he, this is a guy that should be kind of looking to. It's just such like piecemeal analysis when they're actually not looking at the fact that he's really actually been very inconsistent during his time at Bournemouth, but all of a sudden he should be linked to every big club under the sun. I just feel like he's become a bit of a household name as a manager when I don't think he's done anywhere near enough to kind of deserve that. Maybe that feels a bit harsh, but
I think there will be context applied to clubs looking at him in terms of their summer transfer window, because I feel like everyone at the start of the season just kind of went, oh, it's fine, they've got Traffert and Diakite and everything in. They lost 3 players that went to Liverpool, Madrid and PSG.
Yeah, but this also did happen last season, though. They did have a really barren period of results in the new.
No, I know.
They fell off.
I think I do hear it a little bit. I don't. Yeah.
It's the best time ever, PR wise, to be a mid-table manager.
Yeah,
best time ever. Every single mid-table manager is apparently every big mid-table manager is like unbelievable. But in reality, so few. I still think Iraola is the most likely to make the jump up, apart from maybe Marco Silva. I think he would do quite a good job.
I think Silva gets massively overlooked in these conversations a lot of the time.
Yeah, agreed. I love Glasner. I don't think his football will scale up at all. I've said this so many times before. But I like the Iraola shout. Again, it's kind of, you're right. I think we could look back on Bournemouth's last 12 months and be like, it's kind of the opposite of Rob Edwards. He probably could and should have jumped ship.
Yeah.
Iraola and Rob Edwards are very different in lots of ways. The way they look, no offence to Iraola, the way they play football, the teams they managed when they left.
He's attacking his looks now.
Who's more attractive, Iraola or Rob Edwards? Let's be honest.
He's dreamy. I reckon if I was in the boardroom with Rob Edwards, despite the fact that Seb attacked his personality earlier and said that no one's gonna like him anymore, I think if I was sat in a boardroom with him, I think I'd give him the job.
Yeah, all he's got to do is just flutter his eyelashes. I'd be like, wow, you're welcome, man.
But you're right. It's kind of like the horseshoe thing, isn't it? They're so different that they're actually quite similar in a lot of ways.
Yin and yang.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that's right. Yeah. Anyway,
sounds right.
Yeah, sounds about right. Iraola is on the list. Seb, your last pick, please, sir.
My last shout is, I think, my best one in terms of actually being a nearly man. I feel like it might be the same as Ollie's last shout. It's Inzaghi.
Yeah.
Good shout. It's not the same as my last shout, but I did think about it.
That's good for the episode. I think that Inzaghi is kind of overlooked as to how much of a nearly man he's been throughout his entire Inter Milan career. Yeah. And I actually think he fits this podcast so well. Like, you should get him on as a guest, honestly. Last season...
Simone? I don't even know what his name is. Simone.
Simone Inzaghi. He's... Last season, bearing in mind, I do think Inter Milan had the best squad in Serie A last season by some margin as well. I think, especially with the upper echelons of players that they had with the Bastonis, Barellas, Martinez's, Thuram's, etc. DiMarco, Dumfries, Çalhanoğlu. God, the list goes on. But I think that them losing the Champions League final 5-0 gets overlooked as to how much of a drumming that was.
Yeah.
That is losing the Champions League final 5-0 is crazy. Can you imagine if an English team did that? You would never hear the end of it. I think them losing the Serie A on the last day of the season, I think they lost at home to lose the league to
It was a very
To
chaotic
Napoli.
game, wasn't it? I mean, I can't. Yeah, I
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the last day.
I think it was the week before. I think it was the week before they lost it.
Before or something. Well, basically, if they won, if they'd won their last 2 games, I think it was they would have won the Serie A. Bearing in mind that Inzaghi was at Inter Milan for 4 years and only won the league once with that sort of period of dominance that he had. He got to the Champions League final twice and lost the final twice, both of those times.
Yeah.
So I think obviously the years they lost the league to a very strong Napoli team. Last season, I'd argue it was a less strong Napoli team. I mean, I'm not buying into all this Scott McTominay hype in the way that other people are.
Shut up right now. Shut your mouth right now.
The team with bloody Scott McTominay's MVP won the league over them like that. They should be embarrassed.
Yeah,
Scott McTominay,
my man of the year, 100%.
No, fair play to him. He's a class act, as I'd say. But I think that Simone Inzaghi will look back on his Inter Milan career as a whole and say, "I was a nearly man." I think he'll be the first to admit that. And one Serie A title as sort of between leagues and Champions Leagues to show for 4 years where they got to so many finals and had so many close title races, I think is poor. And you see him now, like he's gone. I think he's managing in Saudi Arabia. He's obviously gone out there for the money, unless there's another reason he's gone out there. I doubt it.
I think it's probably just improved the culture, just sort of like improve people's values. I reckon
he was he's a big fan of the league. Yeah,
he wants to be the difference in the world, and I respect that.
Yeah, and so he's gone out there now, and it just kind of feels like you've lost the Champions League final 5-0. You've left Inter Milan. You've gone to Saudi Arabia for probably, I imagine, a couple of years. He'll manage out there. I mean, I don't think he'll have a problem getting a job again in Europe. But if you look at it and you think, okay, if they'd won the Serie A last season and maybe even the Champions League final just been a bit closer than 5-0, could he have then got like another top job around Europe? Like
he definitely would have got one as well. He 100% would have got one. I remember making a video saying that that's who Real Madrid should hire. In like I think it was when they beat Barca, or maybe who did they beat in the quarterfinals of the Champions League? Can't remember.
What, Inter Milan?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was actually. But I was like, it feels like that's the sort of manager that Madrid almost kind of need a little bit. So
Did they beat
I
Bayern?
do agree. Yes, they did beat Bayern. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that was
Harry Kane scored in the
quarterfinals. Yeah.
So also, Seb, to add a bit of colour to the game that you were talking about, it was they drew 2-2 with Lazio the week before, and they were 2-1 up until the 90th minute. Lazio got a penalty in the 90th minute,
I remember.
a lengthy VAR check. Then Inter had a goal ruled out in the 98th minute, and Arnautovic missed an absolute sitter in
I
time.
remember the Arnautovic miss.
So there were. I knew it was like dramatic, but I couldn't remember what it was. It was the week before.
I remember it being insane. So I remember there being talk of there being, because you know Serie A have that weird rule where if it's same goal difference, same points, they have like a one-off title deciding match. Which I was like desperate to see, because could you have imagined watching that game? That would have been absolutely.
And also, don't they do some weird thing where they didn't like schedule the last weekend of games until like they knew what was gonna, like they didn't kick off the games at the same time or something like that, because that was some weird thing. Because I actually remember when we was the day of the Spurs parade, when we was in the pub, that Napoli game was on. It was that day.
Go on, Napoli.
When Tomlin scored the bicycle kick and they won the league. We watched that thing, I'm pretty sure. In and amongst the
Did
celebrations.
somebody score a bicycle kick in that as well?
I'm pretty sure he did, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
This guy's the most
I might be making that up. I'm going to have a look. I'm sure he did.
He's the most overhyped footballer of 2024.
He's not.
I think you should shut your fucking mouth.
I did a video for 442 and he won Man of the Year. And actually Spurs got biggest L of the year. On another note.
Why?
For Eze Saga.
Yeah, but that's... No.
Yeah.
We won a
That's
title.
another, by the way, just to go right back to the start of the podcast, I think that's another reason why Palace might have like just agreed to pay Spurs exactly what we wanted because they were like, lads, we feel so bad for
Sorry,
the summer.
guys.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Also, Daniel Levy leaves Spurs and straight away Palace and Spurs start doing business.
I was going to say, there's no... We were talking about
crazy
this
work.
earlier from like a Spurs point of view, just generally about the fact that one of the things that's held Spurs back for ages is Levy's just meticulous running of the football club, and like every detail has to be, and it's just like things would drag on for so long, whether it was incomings or outgoings, clubs would just get fed up of us. And it's no real surprise, even if you take that kind of side out of it, that as soon as he's gone, the first window, we get a deal done before the window's even open to sell a player that we would have never sold in the past.
It was the quote from the interview he gave where he's like, I always need to walk out of sort of meetings, feeling on top. Like,
Yeah.
there's very much James Maddison needs to be the main man at the roast dinner kind of vibes from Daniel Levy with his negotiation. I don't imagine Steve Parish took too kindly to that. So.
McTominay's title-winning goal for Napoli was a bicycle kick. Or scissor kick. It was a scissor kick.
Mate, it still counts.
Yeah, it was a fraudulent.
He's actually my last nomination for Nearly Man of the Year, Scott McTominay. I'd have to say.
Really?
No, obviously not, you idiot, bro.
Seb, is Scott McTominay like shat in your cornflakes or something? Like, why do you hate him
He's
so
so
much?
likeable.
Do you know what it is?
I
I think it's because
no,
I
I
suggested
don't hate
Spurs
him.
sign him, and Seb shot me down instantly. And I think I'm right there. He actually would have made a big difference for us.
I genuinely think, and I'm sorry to JTV Luca, but I genuinely think the Serie A is like honking at the moment, like so bad. And I think
Rasmus Højlund's looking pretty hot in the Serie A right now.
yeah, and
he
he's still
he's
a
class.
shit footballer.
He's class. Man,
I've never doubted his ability at all.
But it's like I don't know. I just think McTominay. Mate, fair play to McTominay. I really like the McTominay story, but when he finished, what was it, 13th in the Ballon d'Or? I nearly like threw
18th.
up because that is 80. Yeah, he finished above like. I think he finished above like Harry Kane.
I think it was Kane that
He
finished.
finished above João Neves. He finished above João Neves in the Ballon d'Or, and I like nearly like threw up everywhere. But
That's my king right there.
yeah, fair play to him. Who's your last shout, Ollie?
So, who? Inzaghi. So I was writing these down, so we have a list of them. I'm just organised.
And
like
we're deciding a winner, right?
Yeah, of course we are.
Cool.
My final shout is kind of similar vein to Rafinha, I suppose. Is Kylian Mbappe. Now, hear me out on this one.
Oh yeah, I like it.
59 goals he scored for Real Madrid this year. 59. Joined Ronaldo's record for most goals in Real Madrid history in a calendar year. Who cares? Like, genuinely, like, what actually came of those goals? Nothing. They didn't win the league. They didn't win the cup. They didn't win the Champions League. They didn't win the Club World Cup. He didn't win the Nations League. He got nowhere near the Ballon d'Or. Like, even though he had individually an insane season, it's like Rafinha's in a way, but like on steroids, in that he actually walked away with nothing. And I feel like this year
he wasn't that good. I don't think.
Yeah, but he scored 59 goals.
Yeah,
but
And I think like in a year where Ousmane Dembele won the Ballon d'Or, it feels like that was like a window. It's kind of similar to, again, it's a missed opportunity of a year. Like, if Real Madrid walk away with something, or France win the Nations League, I mean, not that should matter to count for anything. Actually, Dembele still would have won it because he would have been in the France squad. Ignore that point. But yeah, I just feel like he was actually the first name that came to mind of just, every time I look, I'm like, oh, Mbappe's actually doing really well at Real Madrid, but just like, has he just missed, is Mbappe ever going to win the Ballon d'Or? Has he
big game fraud at Madrid last season?
Yeah, well, I mean, he did nothing in any of the games I watched him.
Other than
I
Man
don't know if
City.
you were going to mention this as well, but another string to your bow for Mbappe was the PSG arc. Like, he was sat at home watching PSG win the Champions League, win the treble, and it's all without him. And that's what he did for 6 years. And then for them to win it without him, there was a huge Mbappe narrative there that was harmful to us.
I actually think that is probably the main argument, which I completely missed. So thanks for that. I was just thinking that, like, I was trying to think when you said Rafinha, I was like, right, can I think of anyone else actually? And my mind went to what players left a team that went on to win something. I was like, you could even say like someone
Harry
like
Kane.
Zaha or Harry, Michael Elise, Harry Kane.
True.
Like,
Bundesliga title or a Europa League with your boys.
Yeah, exactly. But Mbappe, Mbappe ticks that massively. That's so true.
I think the thing I think what Seb said does kind of save it for me a little bit, because I think that the way I see it with Mbappe, and I think you're totally right in everything you said, but I just look at him and just think he is one of the best footballers in the world that will 100% get this opportunity again. Whereas like a Rafinha, it's not as much of like a once in a lifetime thing for like a Rafinha or something like that. But that doesn't take away the nearly men credentials, especially I think with what you said about the fact that he had to then sit and watch PSG do what they couldn't do at all with him, and he was the sole reason that like Neymar and Mbappe were kind of brought to the club to elevate the status of them, but also then to go and win the Champions League, and it's something they were never able to do. So it wasn't just about Mbappe,
but it's just the whole narrative of leaving the club he'd been at for the past 6 years, where the entire goal was to try and win the Champions League.
And the way that he left as well, like running his contract down and going for free.
Yeah, exactly. It was a huge thing. It was like, oh my God, he's going to go to Madrid, he's going to win the Champions League. He goes trophyless at Madrid, all of his goals mean nothing. He has to sit there and watch PSG have the best individual year they've ever had. And also, something that plays into that narrative is that there was all those clips of Luis Enrique telling Mbappe that he had to press, he wanted him to be a leader, he wanted him to sort of champion this new style that Enrique wanted to bring to PSG. Mbappe never did that, and as soon as Mbappe leaves, that's when you see the best PSG team that we've ever seen in the history of PSG.
And also,
like
Real Madrid kind of
painful.
go back to them being the Galactico kind of that's kind of, you almost feel it's like held, because when you look back at the Galacticos era of Real Madrid, they didn't actually win loads. They never won a Champions League, that team together. So it's like there would have been a lot of the same. I mean, we weren't really, well, we were alive to witness it, but not anywhere near old enough to understand kind of football or the discourse around that team. But I'd imagine there would have been, especially with how volatile the kind of Spanish press is, there would have been a decent amount of scrutiny on that Galacticos team as well, that there kind of almost was last year as well. And it's like there's a load of stars, but there's no real chemistry here whatsoever. So that kind of plays into it a little bit as well. And Real Madrid is so far apart in terms of the individualism from the collective in terms of how PSG won the Champions League last year with Desiree Doué, who was a kid that they bought from, I know a kid with a lot of promise and potential, but this is a kid that Tottenham were going to buy. Like he wasn't the world beater, you know. And look what they kind of did with him, and then Dembele kind of coming back. So yeah, I think the PSG narrative, I really like that.
And also, Real Madrid had just won the Champions League the season before, so he just like perfectly split 2 Champions League runs. And like,
also, there's no guarantee they're going to win anything this year either.
Exactly, and Mbappe has kind of like always been. Like him being at PSG was the nearly side of things for him. It was like, oh, if he just leaves PSG, then he'll explode, and he still hasn't quite done that. And yeah, he might get another opportunity. It's kind of similar logic to we've spoken before about Neymar being a nearly man, in that like obviously you watch him and you're like, yeah, he's unbelievable. Anyone with a brain knows he's probably the 3rd best player in my lifetime. But Definitely. he didn't do what he could have done in his career.
Yeah.
And Mbappe, I think last year Mbappe, in another world, is like clearly the best player in the world, and everything falls for him. But it didn't, and it's not through no fault of his own. But it's not like he had a bad year. Like he scored a lot of goals and could have, but didn't. And that is the nearly man mantra right there.
It just almost makes it more painful, the fact that he's just banging in goals every week in La Liga. Still not performing really on the big stage when PSG are dominating every week on the big stage.
Yeah. Is he just the biggest stat padder in football history?
He might be. No, he's not. I mean, he's an unbelievable footballer, but imagine him just sat there thinking, God, if I just listened to Luis Enrique and just stayed at PSG, I'd have a Champions League.
Pressed a bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
I find quite mad about Mbappe. I think it's quite rare in like this modern era of football that you get a player who is as world class as he is, whose actual legacy through the peak of his career is actually defined by his international career rather than his domestic career. I feel that's quite rare, because you look at what you said about the big game stuff last season. That's totally valid, but on the biggest stage for his country, he has put that team on his back like so many times in the obviously World Cup 2018, World Cup final 2022. Hat-trick in a World Cup final that they didn't even win. Like,
that's a huge nearly man.
It's quite
a massive nearly man.
But it's quite. I find that quite rare. Like these days, where it's your international career that defines how you'll probably be remembered. Because if Mbappe kind of carries on this trajectory where Real Madrid win La Liga every other year, because Barcelona are back at the table now, where I'm not saying that Barcelona went for a barren period of not winning anything, but Xavi still won something there without any real.
Went for a bad period.
But in terms of the drop off from the best Barcelona team we've ever seen. Barcelona back, like in terms of being able to win La Ligas now consistently. Real Madrid might go a few years without winning one.
They're 6 points off the pace right now.
And the Champions League is more... You could argue now this is the most competitive Champions League we've ever probably had, when you look at how strong Arsenal are, how dominant the English teams generally have kind of been. Man City could be back at that kind of
PSG
level.
Bayern.
PSG, Bayern, exactly. So it's like, it's no... Whereas you'd go into every single season over the course of the last 5 years going, well, Real Madrid is going to win it, aren't they? They're going to win it. And now they've got Mbappe. They're going to win it. They've got Mbappe, Bellingham. Whereas now, he might be set for potentially quite a... It's never going to be barren. Real Madrid are going to win things, but a quite underwhelming domestic trophy haul by the end of his prime, and it's actually going to be the France stuff that's kind of really upweighted his legacy.
It kind of reminds me a bit of Zidane.
Yeah,
like Zidane did the best work of his career for France, but and obviously he played for amazing club teams and did well at club level, but he's not. His legacy is with the French team. It's like France '98. well,
06
2006 for
season.
some of the wrong reasons. But
Yeah.
like, didn't they say about Zidane that he wore number 5 because he was half of what a number 10 should be? I read that the other day. That was
Yeah,
like that's a crazy
Zidane is one of
2003
those-
slander going
That's a,
around.
that's a
by the way.
cold quote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were much
yeah.
more imaginative back then. They would have just called him like bald
Yeah.
now, bald fraud. Come on, guys. Think about it a bit more. Let's...
I feel like Zidane is one of those players who, obviously, he's one of the best players of all time. I didn't see him in his prime, really, but I feel like he's one of those where in the modern game, if you look back at some of his seasons, I think he would have got quite heavily criticised
Oh,
in the modern
100%.
game with social media. how it is.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Then you can say that about pretty much anyone.
Well, I was going to say, look at like Bellingham, isn't it? It's just like
It's just Bellingham.
barely goal.
King.
Yeah.
Right,
I
so
like Mbappe.
Mbappe is the last player on the list. So to run through the list of the nearly man, or the biggest nearly man of 2025, we have the nominees are James Maddison, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, Unai Emery, Mikel Arteta, Rob Edwards, Andoni Iraola, Simone Inzaghi, and Kylian Mbappe. How do we want to decide this? I think we can rule some names off the bat. I think that's
Yeah.
what we should do. I think we should take out... I actually think Yamal shouldn't be in here. I think Yamal...
Yeah, I think Rafinha is a much stronger shout, I think.
Yeah. Rob Edwards. I mean, I feel like I like the Rob Edwards shout.
Yeah,
I'm
get
actually-
him out. Get him out. He doesn't belong with these names.
Rob Edwards can go. I think we only need one of Iraola, Emery, and Arteta.
Get Iraola out right now.
Yeah, I think Iraola should go.
I mean,
I think
just
get Arteta out just because boring.
No, but
I prefer the other shouts though. Like I'm kind of decided on my winner.
what if we take out Arteta and Emery and we have Inzaghi as the sole manager,
Yeah. I
yeah,
like that.
no, that's fine.
and then we're left with Maddison, basically Maddison, Rafinha, or Mbappe. We need 2 of them. That's the final 3.
I would personally take out. I'd take out James Maddison personally because I think
Yeah.
that's just more personal.
It's a
I think
pers-
I would as well.
Yeah. It's not as relevant to the global football conversation as the other two.
Love
as much as I
you,
love
Maddie,
James
as well.
Maddison.
Yeah. So the final 3 are Rafinha, Simone Inzaghi, and Kylian Mbappe. I mean, how should we do this? Should we just cast a vote each and hope that we get a winner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Ollie, you go first as host.
I mean, it's tough. It is tough, but I actually think the argument that you put forward, Seb, for my final pick, Mbappe, he just ticks so many boxes for a nearly man. So I'm going to go for my vote for the biggest nearly man of 2025 is Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, I actually am gonna make it unanimous. Is that no? I'm gonna make
Well,
it
he's right if you
majority.
say.
I would make it
Yeah.
unanimous if I voted for Mbappe.
I'm going to vote for Mbappe. I do think that the Inzaghi and Rafinha shouts are almost better in terms of the years they had and what they actually missed out on for the
Yeah.
last year. I think Inzaghi especially.
Yeah, Inzaghi's a great argument.
It's actually crazy. How,
Those two,
how kind of
they
nearly
could have
man
had like
he's been.
career. They were nearly career-defining years.
Yeah.
It's like Mbappe will come again. It's just like,
I just think the Mbappe narrative with how it all played out last season, with how he's joined Real Madrid when they haven't won anything, PSG had their best ever season, the impact that could potentially have on his, and I think has already had on his legacy. I think that is the biggest sliding doors nearly man moment of the year. So that's why he's getting my vote.
yeah, I'd probably go with Mbappe. I think Rafinha is a very, very close second, though, just
Yeah.
because of like almost the overshadowing of what he's done and how it's almost kind of just been forgotten. But
Yeah.
I think it's the PSG narrative that saves it for Mbappe. I think, and I think
You're
it's
welcome,
really strong.
Ollie.
Yeah, like how Ollie said, it's like Seb, your point about my pick was the reason why I think we was going with him.
I like how
I think it's
also
right.
we each had one pick in the final 3, isn't that? Well, Rafinha was technically 2 for me, but we
actually
can count
don't.
that Seb's pick.
I actually didn't.
I thought you
What,
chose Inzaghi.
No,
I said-
Inzaghi was my shout.
Inzaghi,
shit.
although me and Seb were
Technically, all 3 were my shouts.
That's true. That's true. I got close to James.
technical.
James Madison was the closest I got. Iraola
Yeah, he
was,
was
a
in the
bit of
final
a,
four.
a bit of a stinker. I'm not going to lie, but I was like, you know what? I feel like not enough people are like talking about this. I think Emery was.
Yeah.
Emery. I think Emery's a good shout. Madison, I think it's a very like. It's a personal kind of thing with that. I just think like he's really
I like it.
unlucky.
There
like
was
it.
no weak arguments. I think they were all good. They were all varied. That was a good award. I have to make this an annual awards show.
Yeah, I like that.
So, Kylian Mbappe, congratulations. You are the biggest nearly man of 2025. I know you're a friend of the pod, so yeah, maybe we can interview you next week and you can come on.
So the trophy there.
Yeah. What would you do if you tuned in to the Nearlyman next week and I had Mbappe on the pod? What would you do?
I'd probably message you and be like,
mate, that's class.
what the fuck, mate? How'd you get back
Mate,
on
that's
the
class.
Yeah,
pod?
this is sick. I'd say, have you got his agent's email address?
Yeah, I'd say,
well.
does he fancy an only Tottenham appearance?
Yeah, that'd be class.
Well, speaking of only Tottenham, you guys have various podcasts. Feel free to plug them right now.
Yeah, the only Tottenham podcast that me and Ben do weekly. Obviously, very Tottenham Hotspur related, but we cover a lot of other clubs as well in our sort of previews and reviews
Despite
as
the name.
well. If you are interested in checking that out, that would obviously be cool. I'm obviously as well doing the Back Post pod with Rory and Tobes, two of the other boys who I'm sure you know. So if you want to check that out as well, that'd be cool. And
Yeah, only Tottenham. I do nothing but football with Zach and Henry as well. If you want to go and watch that on a Friday, I think it comes out. That's pretty much it. I haven't got anything else to plug.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, both of you, and Happy New Year, everyone. This comes out on
Happy
New
New
Year's
Year.
Day, so
Happy
may
New
you
Year.
all,
I'm so
may you all
happy.
prosper in 2026. We all prospered in 2025.
Yeah.
we did.
Our clubs, although Seb did rate 2025 a 4 out of 10 on the last episode of the Nearlyman. Crazy.
That is an unbelievable shout.
I bumped it up to a 6 when I remembered the Europa League final.
That's when you remember. It's because you saw an Oreo on the table. You were just like, it's all coming back. The memories are flooding back.
I did actually see the final. Those bloody Oreos.
Thank you very much for listening. Like, rate us 5 stars, all that stuff. Subscribe, follow, etc., etc. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Adios.